Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please, guys, participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1. You will hear a conversation between two students. The students are talking about a house they might rent. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Hi, Jason. So what's the house like? I hope it's as good as the advert made out.
It's okay. I think I finally found something we'll both like at last.
Brilliant. So what's it like?
Well, it's within walking distance of uni. It's in a residential area. There aren't many students living there, but it's easy to get onto campus. And the city centre is only a bus ride away.
Okay, that's a good start. But what's it like inside? To be honest, when I saw the advert, I didn't think it would be big enough for the three of us. The rent's not exactly cheap for the area. So come on, is it worth it?
Well, it's got 3 bedrooms and a nice living room, so we'll all have our own space to work and somewhere to sit together. It's clean and there's no need to decorate. I'm sure your mum and dad would be happy with it, if that's anything to go by.
Okay, that sounds promising.
And the landlady was really nice. She's not one of those people with a lot of properties. In fact, this is the only one she has, so she really looks after it. Her daughter was a student and stayed there last year, apparently.
Good. The advert said there's no garage, but I can park on the road outside. I checked, and there are no parking restrictions along that road. I know there are some shops in the neighbourhood, so we'll be okay for food and basic things.
Yes, that's right. It's a nice house, and the kitchen's fine. I suppose it's not exactly modern, but it's clean and functional. All the things you need, washing machine, cooker. There's no garden, which is a shame, so nowhere to sit in the summer. But there's Wi-Fi, so all in all, I'm happy with it.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Right then, I think we've cracked it. I'd like to see it myself before we sign anything. I might pop along later to have a look. It's on Foxwell Road, isn't it? Let me just make a note of the address. That's Foxwell Road, is that right?
Yes, that's right, number 94. I'll come along with you for another look. So you know what the rent is, don't you? £430 a month. I know that's £50 a month more than we were expecting to pay, but I think it's worth it.
It sounds reasonable, especially if it's in a nice area. And we need to pay a deposit as well, don't we? According to the ad, that's 1 month rent in advance.
Yes, that's right. That's normal when you rent, so I was expecting it. You'd better give the landlady a ring if we want to have a look round. Why not give her a call and see if she's free later?
Okay, good idea. What's her number?
It's a mobile number, 01764 445328.
Right, I'll phone her now. Hopefully she'll be free and we can go over there this evening.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You will hear a presenter on a radio phone-in show. The presenter is talking to a woman who was bitten by a poisonous spider. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15.
Today, we're continuing our Traveller's Tales. On the line we have Amanda Toddington, who had quite a nasty experience in Australia last year. Isn't that right, Amanda?
Yes. My husband and I were on holiday and we were staying at a friend's house on the coast near Brisbane. It was towards the end of the holiday and I was about to go into the garden and enjoy my breakfast. I walked out into the kitchen, slid my left foot into my shoe and felt a tiny sting. It was pretty painless, but I shook the shoe off my foot and saw this tiny spider running out as the shoe hit the wall. Anyway, not being an expert, I presumed the worst, that I'd been bitten by something that was going to kill me, and I completely lost control. I don't think I've ever screamed so much in all my life. We'd been told beforehand to always check our shoes before putting them on, as it's a common way to get bitten, so I suppose it was my own fault, really.
So what was it that had bitten you?
Tony, that's our Australian friend, he immediately asked me if I knew what had bitten me, and I pointed to the corner of the room where I'd last seen the spider. He picked up a jar and found the creature in the corner where the shoe had hit the floor. "It's a redback," he said, and he gently placed the jar over the spider. The funny thing was, we'd been talking about some of the creatures we needed to be careful of a few days previously, and as he said the name redback, the conversation came flooding back to me. In particular, the fact that the bite can be extremely painful. I've found out since that the redback is from the same family as the black widow spider, and it's the female that does the damage, which it turned out was what I'd been bitten by.
You must have been absolutely petrified.
You can say that again. I remember feeling quite confused. I wasn't in a great deal of pain to begin with, and yet I could see from our friends' faces that they were concerned. Tony explained that the venom or poison of the bite spreads quite slowly, so the pain doesn't feel too bad at first. Gwen, Tony's wife, brought an ice pack, and Tony held it against the bite to make it less painful. Apparently, you're not supposed to put a bandage on the area, as this can make it hurt even more. Tony tried to put my mind at rest by explaining that this was quite a common bite, that the hospital would have an anti-venom, and that everything would be okay. But I was beginning to panic. We were flying back to the UK the next day, and I really didn't know what to do.
Before you hear more of the radio show, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20.
So what did you do?
Well, Tony phoned the doctor, who told him to check my symptoms for the next hour or two. As time went on, the pain became very intense, from my foot right up to my knee. My husband was on the internet and was reading out the possible symptoms. I wasn't feeling sick, and I hadn't yet developed a fever, but I had a terrible headache, and my foot was beginning to swell up. At this point, Tony decided to take me to the local hospital to be on the safe side. I really didn't want to go, as I had visions of being kept in for days and all our plans being spoilt. But Tony and my husband insisted. When we got to the hospital, I was relieved to see how casual everyone was when Tony explained I'd been bitten by a red-back spider. They told me to take a seat and got on with their work.
And did you receive any treatment?
By the time I got to see a doctor, the pain was very intense indeed, and I was getting quite upset. The doctor decided to give me a dose of an antivenom, which he assured me would eventually deal with the problem. Unfortunately, he also explained that it wouldn't have an immediate effect and the symptoms might last for several days. But the story has a happy ending. My husband managed to book us onto another plane 1 week later. And even better news was that the symptoms of the bite finally cleared up after about 24 hours. Within a couple of days, I was back to normal again. So thanks to the spider, we managed to extend our holiday by a week.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear 3 linguistics students, Joe, Martin and Angela, discussing the presentation that Joe is giving soon as part of his course. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi, Martin. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Joe.
Yeah, hi, Joe. So you're really worried about your presentation? The one about names?
I am.
Well, you know your stuff on names pretty well, so it's just a question of selecting what you want to use.
That's right.
But there's so much.
Well, you don't have to include everything. Let's start somewhere.
Well, for example, there's a lot to discuss about people's names in terms of culture.
It would be a good way to start, bringing in issues of religion, society.
I thought so.
As long as you can keep it concise, since it's potentially a large area.
I'll pick out some key points.
Good. Now, that will tend to be about differences. What about something on ways in which naming practices are often similar across different languages?
That sounds good.
I'm not sure how much I could say that's really about just names and not really general language.
Maybe you need to give that some more thought.
Yes, I'm not ruling it out.
Well, what about what first names mean? That's got to be specific to languages or language groups.
Yes, there are all sorts of different principles at work. It's a rich area for discussion.
And you can present lots of examples.
It would mean a good slide or two. I'll enjoy making those up.
Don't forget to put our names in.
No, OK. Right, where have we got up to? Yes, now, there's the question of place names.
Ones where the name of the place is the word for the situation, like something to do with sea or mountain, etc.
Yes, people often don't realise the origin.
It sounds like it's just a translation issue to me. Don't you think you might give that a miss?
Given the time limit, perhaps you're right.
You need something on place names. Could you get history in?
Actually, the way migrants often used to name places after somewhere in their country of origin is interesting.
Sounds a bit narrow to me.
Well, I'd hope to build it up a bit.
Perhaps you should make a final decision on that later.
OK, I'll see how the rest of it goes first.
Is that the lot?
No, there's still country names, the origins of those. I think that's an interesting area.
Yeah, because it's something we often don't think about.
It'd be a way to bring in various aspects. History, certainly.
I could project a map of the world and have people match the original meanings to the countries.
Well, that seems to be a foregone conclusion.
Fine.
Yes, I'm feeling clearer already.
Now you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the conversation and answer questions 27 to 30.
You know, there's another aspect that I think I'll cover.
Yes?
Brand names.
Isn't that more to do with business studies?
Well, international companies are finding it increasingly important to have brand names that can be used in many different countries.
Oh, so they can advertise the same product everywhere?
Yes, and it seems that brand names are very special in our brains.
How so?
Well, there was a research study recently, carried out on a group of about 50 students. They showed them 108 words, and the students had to say whether they recognised them as real words or not. The list included, all mixed up, ordinary nouns, brand names and meaningless words, and they were shown all the words quickly. And the brand names seemed to be recognised strongly and in the emotional right-hand side of the brain. It was interesting that the brand names were recognised more readily if they were displayed in capital letters rather than lowercase, something which doesn't apply to normal words.
How strange. What else did the researchers find out?
Of course, it's a relatively small study, but they suspect that other visual features are at play, and so that, for example, colour has a major effect in helping us to store brand names in a special way in our brains.
I suppose that's logical. But what do they mean by a special way?
I'm not saying I understood everything about this study.
Of course not.
But they seem to be saying that the power of brand names is that they conjure up a range of associations inside our brains, more so than ordinary words or names do.
I guess this is great news for international companies.
Potentially, certainly. Though exactly what they do...
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about balloons and airships. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Now, balloons and airships are worth consideration because while on the one hand they represent humans' first successes at air flight, after centuries of less than successful theory and experimentation, they also, on the other hand, continue to be used today. We may have appeared to have moved on to jet planes and space rockets, but you can still see these more primitive flyers in the skies. OK, gas balloons first. France saw the first balloon flight in 1783, and this began a process of development. By 1862, in the Civil War in the United States, we find Thaddeus Lowe replacing spies with balloons to go behind enemy lines. The success of this led to the continued use of balloons in peacetime, and they were employed in the creation of maps. And such applications continue to this day, with balloons assisting in increasing our knowledge and understanding of the world we live in. Unmanned balloons are still widely used to collect data to inform scientific research of various kinds. You'd be surprised at how much they contribute. All sorts of instruments can be mounted in a balloon, and ongoing investigations into climate benefit from the information that can be gathered from a flight. Well, that's gas balloons. Now, the increase in the popularity of ballooning as a sport or leisure activity has been mainly due to the development of the modern hot air balloon, being cheaper and safer than the gas balloon. Heating air, rather than using potentially explosive gas, is what makes these rise, although the process doesn't generate as much lift as with gas balloons. But this is a small price to pay for its other benefits, and this type of balloon is no doubt here to stay. Airships are also fairly old in their origins. The idea for a balloon that could be powered and steered was first published in France in 1784, although 1852 was the date of the first successful airship flight. The first airships, like the first aircraft, didn't provide any weather protection for their crew, so it must have been rather uncomfortable up there. But designs continued to develop in sophistication. It was realized that the ships would drift about if they weren't strengthened, and that to work effectively, they would have to have a framework. Once design started incorporating this, flights became longer and more reliable. Airships were deployed for various uses in the First World War, and once peace returned, designers began to turn their attention to ambitious plans for regular intercontinental flights. However, in the 1930s, this program more or less came to an end. For one thing, the speed and popularity of airliners meant that the airship appeared superseded. They just couldn't compete. And as if that weren't enough in itself, another factor in the decline of the airship was an alarming number of crashes, and this, of course, put people off. Nevertheless, several countries have continued to build smaller airships for various uses, such as naval observation or publicity purposes. In fact, their popularity seems set for a slight revival, and in the past few years there has been renewed attention paid to the possibility of using them to transport cargo. Who knows? Maybe the 21st century will be the age of the airship. Now, if you look at your handouts, you'll see that I've included some information.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.